We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Lamed Vav Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 136b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing the case of the Mishnah where a father gives his son property mehayom l'achar misa. What that means is that the son owns the actual property from today, but the son does not have any rights to the produce until after the death of the father. The father gets the produce until he dies. And the Gemara is discussing a case where the son sells his rights, and again, those rights are going to come into effect when the father dies, but then the son ends up dying before the father, and so the question is, does the buyer, does he have any rights when the father dies? Does he get the produce of this field or not? And the Gemara says it's a machlokas amoroim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, lo kana lokeach, the buyer, he does not acquire anything. Reish Lakish Amar kana lokeach, and Reish Lakish says the buyer does acquire, he gets the produce after the father dies. And the Rashbam explains, lo kana lokeach, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the buyer gets nothing. Afilu l'cheshayom ha'av achar kach, even when the father dies later on, shemei olam lo hayu ru'uyin lavo li'dehaben, because they were never, the produce was never going to come to the son. El yachzeru l'shar yorshayav, rather the produce, it ends up going to the other heirs of the father. And the Rashbam notes, umiu, nevertheless, let's say the son did not sell anything during the lifetime of the father, but the son predeceased the father. There Rabbi Yochanan would admit, even though the son died first and then the father died, nevertheless, the heirs of the son actually do inherit the gift of the son in that case. They inherit the produce after the father dies. That would be the grandchildren, specifically the grandchildren through this son. Velo Yarshayav, and the heirs of the father would not inherit in that case. Avalgabi Mechira, but when it comes to selling, let's say the son sells his share, and then the son dies before the father, Haresi like Nafsho Mishas Mechira, he has now removed himself from the moment that he sells it. Vegamlo Bali Yado Sheyuchal Halokeach Lizchos Mikocho. It also never actually came to him that the buyer should be able to take possession, and that's why the buyer loses out, according to Rabbi Yochanan. And the Gemara continues and explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar lo kana lokeach. Rabbi Yochanan says the buyer does not acquire anything because kinyan peiros ke kinyan haguf dami, because kinyan peiros is considered to be like kinyan haguf, meaning the father over here owns the produce of the property and the son has the property but has no rights to use the property until the father dies, and therefore the fact that the father has the rights to the produce, it's like he has a kinyan haguf, it's like he has the full kinyan and the son has essentially sold nothing. Reish Lakish Amar, Reish Lakish says kana lokeach, the buyer does acquire kinyan peiros kinyan haguf dummy, because the kinyan peiros the father has is not considered kinyan haguf. The son really does have a kinyan haguf, and the sale goes through even though the son dies before the father. And the Gemara continues, but then Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they already argued about this issue of whether kinyan peiros is kinyan haguf or not. At a different time, the Itmar, because it was stated as follows, Hamocher sadeu lepeiros, let's say somebody sells his field, but again, he's just selling it that the person should be able to get the peiros, he just gets the produce, that's a kinyan peiros. Rabbi Yochanan says, Mevi v'kori, the person who has this kinyan peiros, the person who's using the produce, if he brings bikurim, he brings the bikurim and he reads from the parsha. The parsha says that the land belongs to the person, and this is considered that he is the owner. The kinyan peiros he has is like a kinyan haguf. Reish Lakish says, Maybe ve'eno kore, he does bring bikurim, but he does not read from the parsha because he's not considered to be the owner of the property. And the Gemara explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Maybe v'kore, Rabbi Yochanan says he brings and he reads from the parsha of bikurim, kasavar kinyan peiros ke kinyan haguf dami, because Rabbi Yochanan holds the kinyan peiros he has is like a kinyan haguf, and therefore again he reads from the parsha. Reish Lakish says, Maybe ve'eno kore, he brings the bikurim but he doesn't read from the parsha. Kinyan peiros lav ke kinyan haguf dami, because the kinyan peiros is not considered like a kinyan haguf. And the Gemara continues and explains why we need to have this machlokas a second time. Amar lach Rabbi Yochanan will say to you, Afagav de v'yalma kinyan peiros ke kinyan haguf dami, even though in general kinyan peiros is ke kinyan haguf, hacha over here in this case again where the father gives his son this gift, it's necessary again to say the kinyan peiros is ke kinyan haguf, because sal gadai techamina, one might have thought abba lagabe b'reya chulei achel, that when it comes to a father with regards to his son he is mochel, essentially he gives up his kinyan because he's trying to give something to his son. Kamash Malana comes to teach us, no, he still has the kinyan peiros, which is considered kinyan haguf, according to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish would say the other direction. Afagav de v'yalma kinyan peiros lav kinyan haguf dami, even though in general kinyan peiros is not like a kinyan haguf. Hacha itzrich, over here it's necessary to say again that kinyan peiros is lav kinyan haguf when it comes to the kinyan peiros of the father, because sal kadai t'chamina, one might have thought kol legabe nafshe, anything as far as himself. Afilu b'makom brei nafshe adifalei, even if it's importance with regards to his son, he considers himself more important, and so maybe over here there is more chance that it's kekinyan aguf and kamash malon. Therefore, Reish Lakish is teaching that over here as well, the kinyan peiros is lav kekinyan aguf. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asks Reish Lakish the following question from a Brisa. The Brisa says, Nechasai loch v'acharecha yirash ploni. Let's say a person says, I'm giving my property to you, and after you it will be inherited by so-and-so. V'acharav yirash ploni, and then after the second person it's going to be inherited by a third person. Now in this case, when he says Nechasai loch to that first person that he's giving the property, that person is getting the peiros. He's essentially getting to use the property, but he doesn't own the guf hakarka, he doesn't own the land itself. And then when he dies, again, it's inherited by a second individual, and then when the second individual dies, it's going to be inherited by a third individual. And so the Brisa says, Meis Rishon, if the first person dies, Kaneh Sheni, the second person acquires the property. Meis Sheni, when the second person dies, Kaneh Shlishi, the third person acquires the property. But the Brisa says, Meis Sheni B'chaye Rishon, let's say the second person dies while the first person is alive. So in this case, it cannot go to the third individual, because the third individual is supposed to receive it from the second individual. In this case, the second person died, so he never got it. So now it has to go back. And the Brisa says, Yachzuru nechasim liyorshe rishon. The property goes back to the heirs of the first person. Again, the case over here is the second person died while the first was alive. Then the first person dies, so it goes to the yarshim of that first person. And so Rabbi Yochanan asks Reish Lakish, V'im Isa, if it's true what you say, that kinyan peiros is lav kinyan aguf, so the first person, he only has a kinyan peiros. He doesn't have a kinyan aguf. So why does it go to his yarshim? Liyorshe nosen mi boil. It should go back to the yarshim of the person who gave it in the first place, the original owner. It should go to his yarshim. It shouldn't go to the yarshim of the first person. And Reish Lakish responds, Amar le Reish Lakish, he said to Rabbi Yochanan, Kvar tirgama Rav Hoshea Bava, Rav Hoshea already explained this in Bavel, Acharecha shani, when a person does the setup of nechasai loch v'acharecha yirash ploni, he's actually not simply saying that you have a kinyan peiros to the first person. He's saying, by a case of acharecha, he's saying you have both the kinyan peiros and the kinyan haguf. You are the full owner, and then after you, it's going to go to ploni, it's going to go to so-and-so, and therefore, since he really does have a kinyan haguf, it goes again to the Yorshe Rishon. It goes to the heirs of the first person if the second person dies while the first person is alive. V'chein Rami Rabba bar Rav Huna Kamei Rav, and Rabba bar Rav Huna also had the same contradiction in front of Rav. V'yomer, he said the same thing, Acharecha Shani. He said by a case of Acharecha, it's different. We say over there, it's not only a kinyan peiros, it's a kinyan haguf as well. But the Gemara continues, Vatanya, but isn't there another brisa which says, Yachzur liyarshe nosen? It actually says that in this case, when the second person dies before the first person, it does not go to the Yarshe Rishon, it actually goes to the Yarshe Nosen. It goes back to the heirs of the person who gave it, the original owner. And the only way to understand that brisa is actually like Reish Lakish. You have to say that all the first person has is a kinyan peiros, and kinyan peiros is lav kinyan aguf, and that's why it goes to the Yarshe Nosen. So this brisa seems to be difficult according to Rabbi Yochanan, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph.